The most common question I get asked by someone just arrested for their first offense of drunk driving is, am I going to jail? And my answer is always the same. Yes, you are. It's going to be for a long time. It's going to be hard. And you'll sell me the same Bubba. All right, I'm just screwing around. All right, actually, the answer is going to depend. That's the lawyer answer. Okay. First, we got to define the question. Okay. What type of drunk driving case is this? Okay. Is this you're running the mill, you blew a stop sign, or you're speeding, you got stopped by the police, you got pulled over, maybe you did field sobriety tests, maybe you took a breath test, you got arrested, you got brought back to the station, you got booked, right? Is it that type of case? Or is it a case where you got in a serious accident and really hurt somebody? Or did someone die? Or it was your kid in the car? Okay, these are all aggravating factors which will change the answer to this question. So let's talk about, first and foremost, what is OUI or DUI here in Massachusetts, okay? So OUI in Massachusetts, DUI pretty much every place else in the country. It all means the same thing here in Massachusetts. Were you operating a motor vehicle? That can mean driving a motor vehicle, but it can also mean sitting in the car parked with the radio on or the heater on. This is weird, but this is how Massachusetts defines operation. Were you doing so on a public way or a way in which the public has a right of access? That means were you driving down the street or were you in like a parking lot of like a shopping center or something like that? Basically, most roads, unless it's strictly a private way, are going to be a public way. Were you doing it while impaired under the influence of alcohol or drugs? Most people think of DUI, they think of alcohol because it's more common than DUI drugs or OUI drugs, but they both essentially fall under the same statute. Now, if it's an aggravated form of this, there's a potential for jail time. In other words, if someone was seriously injured, if you killed them, if your kid was in the car, these are just some of the aggravating factors. There's a possibility of going to jail. Okay. All right, so let's assume it's a regular run-of-the-mill drunk driving case where you just got pulled over, no one was seriously injured, certainly no one died, no kid in the car, no other aggravating factors. We still have to know a little bit more about you because depending on your history, it changes the answer to the question, okay? Do you have no prior record, okay? Or are you a person that has a prior record? Maybe this is your first drunk driving offense, but you have a lot else on that record. Maybe you've been to jail before. Maybe you haven't. Maybe you're on probation before. Maybe if your record's particularly long and you have those types of issues, that's going to affect the answer. But for the normal person who doesn't have a long record, maybe they have something on the record but not much, or it's their first offense ever, including your first offense DUI, the answer to the question is simply not likely, highly unlikely that you'll ever go to jail for your first offense DUI. Let's assume you're that person who has no record or a very minor record. What are you likely to get for your first offense OUI in Massachusetts? While the judge can sentence you for up to 2.5 years in the House of Correction, take away your license for a year, hit you with a big fine, that's highly unlikely to happen in your particular situation, okay? More likely than not, you're going to get what we refer to as a first offenders program, otherwise known as a 24D program. All right, so what is that program all about? That's going to be, you're going to be placed on probation for a year. In many cases, the judge won't even make it a guilty finding. They're going to make it something called a continuation without a finding, or QUAF for short. And we'll talk about what that means in a second. You're going to have to do a bunch of things. One of those things is to enter and complete a 16-week alcohol education class. That can be done in many cases online, but it's once a week for 16 weeks. You're going to be told of a number of fines and fees you're going to pay, but just know that it adds up to $600 in fines and fees. You're going to lose your license between 45 and 90 days, okay? And if you do all that and have no other issues during that year, if the judge gave you that QUAF, at the end of that year, the case is going to be dismissed. That's right, no conviction. It's actually a dismissal. You can answer on job applications and other places that you weren't convicted of anything because you haven't been, because that case got dismissed. However, you got to wait and understand one very important thing, that even though the case got dismissed, if you were ever to do this again, that case does count as your first offense. So if you ever pick up another DUI and you're convicted of it or otherwise take a plea, that one's going to be a second offense. So even though it got dismissed, you get that benefit, it's still going to count as a first offense for any future DUIs. So that's the answer for what the normal person with no prior record or a minimal record is likely to get for their first offense DUI. And that's it.